Many of you talk about wanting to learn to do bindings on your quilts, and this is not a quilt, this is a table runner, but I am going to do a regular binding on this. And do you ever look at your binding fabric and think, oh my, I don't have a whole lot of it left and I don't want to waste it, but you want to do your 2.5-inch strips for your binding? Well, I have come up with a way that you don't have to use quite as much fabric. Instead of 2.5-inch strips, you can cut 1 3/4-inch strips. And let me show you how you can use those for your binding. Another example of a time I would use this size of binding is when I'm sewing with a lot of the ethnic fabrics that I like to use. Some of them are quite thick, so this binding has a nice texture to it. This is a cotton homespun and it is very thick. So that would not work if I used a 2.5-inch binding and doubled it over, and then this seam here would be very thick and bulky. So I, on this one, used the 1 3/4-inch binding and it worked just fine. It was still pretty thick, but it worked. So you have your 1 3/4-inch strips. You're going to lay the first one down, wrong side down, so right side up, and then lay down your next one just the opposite way. So right side down, across it at 90 degrees, cross over enough that none of that, selvage is going to be in your stitching area. So then go to your top edge where it crosses. So make your needle go right there and then stitch down to the opposite end. And instead of cutting your thread, take this piece that you crossed over and put it down the way that you did the first piece. Take your next one and cross it over the same way. And then butt it up against where you just ended, really close. There you go. Then you can keep stitching without cutting your thread. Okay, and then this is where you can cut your thread. And then you can snip that thread right there. Okay, and cut 1/4 inch away. There and there. And now you have a nice long piece of binding, and we're going to go over to the ironing board and let me show you what we do next. Now with your long piece of binding, you are going to turn over 1/4 inch, and you can just eyeball this. You don't need to measure it, but just turn it over about 1/4 inch and keep pressing. You're going to press the whole length of your fabric binding. And when you get to one of the seams, make sure you iron that first before you turn it over. Make sure it's really flat. And you just keep going like this. Now I'm going to stitch my binding to the table runner. And I'm going to start probably right about here and leave a tail. So I'm going to start stitching about here and leave this nice long tail up by one end. I'm holding my binding so that the folded part is to the left, the raw edge, and right side down. Raw edge is to the right. I have my walking foot on my machine because this is basically a quilt and you have pretty much thickness there and you want the all the layers to go through evenly. So I have my walking foot on. You can back tack and then just go all the way around. All right, I'm coming up on the end where I'm going to have to turn the corner here. And so I stitch all the way up, almost to the end, maybe one stitch away from the end. Okay, and then you can back tack and trim your stitch. Now, watch what happens here. Okay, you're going to flip your binding up at a right angle to where it is. Stitch down. Make sure that, see if I can hold this the right way. Make sure that this is all one straight line right here. That this edge is exactly the same place as this edge, and this is a 90-degree angle. Okay, so then hold your finger there, flip it down, and make sure these edges are even. Make sure this fold is even with the top edge. And you can pin it if you want. You can pin that there. You might want to pin it down in this area a little more because there's nothing underneath that. Okay? And then we're going to start stitching right there. And when you go over the seam, just be really careful that you are holding it down and that it doesn't get flipped the wrong way. You want it to go the way that you pressed it. Okay, and you're going to do the same thing on all the corners. All right, I'm on my last corner and I'm coming up on the area where I have that little tail that I left before. And I am only going to stitch down maybe a couple of inches. Okay, and then cut. All right, now here's the cool part. All right, here is the part that makes this connecting of these two pieces so much easier. So what you're going to do, you have two tails here, and it doesn't matter how far apart these two areas are where, you know, it's not stitched down, but lay one down, lay the other one down, and then cut a little snip off of one end. All right, now you're going to lay this down, open it up, and lay it down the long way. Right there. Okay, so you're laying it down and you can make a little mark. You can see underneath here where that little piece ends, and make a mark there, and that's where you're going to cut. So you're cutting at a 90-degree angle, of course. You're going to flip this piece down so the right side is up. You're going to hold this piece at a 90-degree angle to that one. And you can make this easier by folding over your table runner. Then you have a little more leeway here. Okay, so you want there. And you can pin it, and you're going to stitch from this top corner to, you kind of have to always lift up and see where your corner is, and you're going to stitch down to that bottom corner there, a straight line. Okay, trim your threads, cut a 1/4 inch of piece off, and look at that, it fits. So you can finger press that down and finger press your 1/4 inch seam, okay? And then you stitch from where you ended your 1/4 inch seam and then connect up your 2 seams right here. So let's do that. And then back tack and trim these threads, and there you go. All right, now here is where you start doing your pinning. You need a lot of pins for this. So you're going to, you're going to fold this over and put your pin on the top side. Hold that over, put your pin on the top side right along that ditch. And if you look back, you will be able to see that you've caught your binding just fine on the back. Let's put in a couple more pins the same way. And just check. Make sure that you have plenty of space right here, that there is plenty of space. If you get to a place for some reason that your pin is like that and it's not catching, you got to make it tighter. You got to just trim it down, not trim, you've got to fold it down tighter so that you have, you know, a good amount of space, because when you take your pin out, it's going to loosen up and it might slide. So pin all the way around like that, and I'll show you how I pin the corners. All right, I'm here at the corner, and that's how the corner looked. Remember, you folded it down like that. It was at a 90-degree angle. Well, now you're ready to fold that over. And what you're going to do, I've always put my pins in starting kind of in the middle of a long expanse of the table runner, and then I pin going to the left because I'm going to be stitching this direction. So I like to pin going this way. It's just me. Now, when you get here to the corner, you make sure that your top side is looking good. See, it looks great there. And then you will see this angle here. You want that to be really neat. Oh, sorry, I'm kind of over to the side. You want that to be really clean looking there. And you'll see a nice 90-degree angle going right here. Take that, flip it over to the back, holding it down, pin right into your ditch right there, right in that corner, pin it. And check the back. It looks good. Okay, so you're going to be stitching this direction like that, and then coming around here, so that all makes sense. All the folds are facing the right direction. Okay, so keep going around. That's how you do the corner. Pin all the way around, and you want your pins really close together. All right, I've got it pinned all the way around. Push one of the pins in all the way and then pull the next one out, so you have an area here for your walking foot to go so that it won't drag any pins along. Okay, and you're going to start stitching. You can back tack and start stitching right in the ditch there. And don't take your pins out until you're really, really close. And in fact, you can gradually take your pin out as you're stitching toward the pin. So just like that, just gradually take it out so that your binding stays exactly where you want it. And you're going to go all the way around like that. Now I'm coming up on the corner, so I'm just still stitching the same way right in the ditch. and taking my pin out gradually. Make sure this pin is out just a little bit so it's not right in that corner. You're going to pivot with your needle down right in that corner of the ditch. So just go slowly. And if you need to lift up your presser foot to get that needle right down in the corner of that ditch, you might need to just go really slow there. And then you pivot with your needle down and you go along your merry way. And there you go. Okay, and you just go all the way around. You can back tack when you get back to the end where you started, and then you'll be done with your binding.